Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle. Me, in my series Freemasonry and Satanism. It's a new book I'm going to share. Series number 157. Moving on up the series numbers. From the Ashes of Angels, the Forbidden Legacy of a Fallen Race, Andrew Collins. The Forbidden Legacy of a Fallen Race. I'm starting to put together two and two. The pieces. I grew up Catholic, Christian, and since 9/11, the Muslims have been under attack, and for a couple thousand years, many nations have banned or punished or exiled, controlled Jewish peoples. Why? What is it that makes some people different than the rest of us? Is it a religion? And can a religion be demonic? What's that have to do with UFOs and aliens? The so-called Planet X, Nemesis, the Destroyer, Herculumbus, Wormwood, and to modernize the term, Nibiru, in the beings instead of watchers, Anunnaki. And with all the channeled material and the discussions I've been listening to, apparently the names they use for these beings that psychics talk to, channeling, have names like Seth, Abraham, Cryon, etc., and even names of fallen angels and other beings, even demons, mentioned throughout history, like the raw material. So I've been perplexed, kind of torturing myself for the last week or two. What's the next video going to be about? How am I going to put all this together? So I've been reading numerous books at the same time. One day I'll read this for a couple hours, another day I have another one, and next day I'll read another one, and I'll go back to this one, and I'll ponder and I'll think. So it takes me sometimes a couple days to muster up the idea of what I want to talk about, so that I can try to put all this together, even if it's only in my own mind. But I think people watching my videos also get a hint or a clue to what's going on. I get some very interesting comments. So please leave comments. I am putting together a book, which is why I am republishing some of my videos. When I went and extracted a lot of the comments that my viewers made, and organized them, I noticed 30 or 40 of my videos, maybe a few more, did not have any comments. And it could be for a couple reasons. One, a year ago, I erased all the videos, over 500, from my YouTube channel, and I've been republishing them after I reorganized them, restructured them, modernized some of them. So I'm completing 4 years worth of work, and a year ago I took them all down, and since then they're all back up, minus a lot of the early sky spraying video documentation I've been posting since 2005. I've been photographing or videoing the chemtrails that they dump in the sky intentionally. So the last year I've been reposting everything, organizing everything. And it's amazing. It's about 500 hours worth of videos, about 400 plus videos, encompassing about 200 books and magazines and other documentation, photographs. So I do have some ideas for the future. But in the meantime, I wanted to try to put all that together. Maybe this will help. And the next video after it, and the next video after that. So every now and then I kind of switch gears and go this way or go this way. But just a recap to kind of sum up what we're talking about and what I have maybe figured out in my mind. The hidden dangers of the rainbow. Constance Kumbi. Okay, the rainbow symbolizes, as we know, the New Age and the gay agenda, etc. It says here the hidden dangers of the rainbow. So apparently, and we combine that with New Age, we combine that with the founder of the New Age, one of the founders, Helena Blavatsky, The Secret Doctrine, the Theosophist Society. And when we look at the Theosophist Society, Rosicrucianism, Freemasonry, we find a lot of links to the Kabbalah. We find the Kabbalah is linked to sorcery, magicians, magi, witchcraft, and we find this seems to be what is behind the ancient Jewish people, the historic Jewish people, and other cultures all over the world involving symbolism like the all-seeing eye and the serpent and the sun and some other symbols. So I just released another video on this particular book. So I have several videos, and that's series number 40. I looked at this book. I'll be making videos. Messages from Maitreya the Christ. So again, we're talking about some religion. It's not Christianity. It's not Islam. It's not Orthodox Jewish religion. It's not Islam. It's not Buddha. It's not many of the normal religions we know about. So again, what is it? Is it part of the Kabbalah, sorcery, the occult? And what does that have to do with the book I'm going to go over? The Forbidden Legacy of a Fallen Race. I'm beginning to put this together, I think. Even the Hopi Indians talk about that we're in the fourth human race evolution. There have been 4 times that different humans were on Earth, and then they died out apparently, maybe because of some big catastrophe. And then you had the second race, and the third race, and the fourth race. And apparently we're supposed to be getting ready to enter the 5th race. You hear about these terms all the time. Talked about this book. Haven't made a video on it yet. But the New Age Primer. So what is this New Age? The Eye of the Centaur, a visionary guide into past lives. So these souls, my soul, your soul, anybody else's soul or spirit, were we living in the first batch of humans on Earth? And then they evolved. Were we reincarnated into the second batch, the third batch? And as the humans we are today. And who are they communicating? All these channelers, all these psychics. Angels, or were they reincarnated, deceased humans? I'm going to beat this up until I figure it out. And of course it does bring to mind some issues that are all over YouTube about some pending catastrophe. Herculumbus, or the Red Planet, coming towards Earth. So what I've figured out reading this book and other books like this book, Blindsided, Planet X, in 2003, Earth changes. Get it? Global warming, climate changes, sustainability, biodiversity, Jade Helm 15, military exercises all over America in 2015, preparing for seemingly something like a disaster, martial law. The Book of Enoch. I've made videos on this book, some scrolls or tablets and material they discovered by the Dead Sea in the Middle East. The Middle East is a reoccurring theme. 911 somehow gave the powers that be the ability, in other words, the American people and the world's people complied because they were probably deceived by 911. But anyways, NATO and other countries, Israel, England, Britain, United States, have been attacking countries in the Middle East since 2001 and even before. And what's that got to do with the Book of Enoch? So a lot of the focus here is the Middle East, the origin, apparently, of the Kabbalah. And the Kabbalists were accused of sorcery, witchcraft, the occult, the religion of the pharaohs in Egypt, where they had imprisoned the ancient Hebrews, who apparently learned this pharaoh's secrets, the people of Egypt, which was some kind of magic. You see how it connects? So the Book of Enoch. Who are these beings? Are they some kind of aliens? Are they Anunnaki from another planet? Or are they from another dimension, the spiritual world? And Israel is to me, on the front line of all the problems we're facing in the world today. Whether people want to admit it or not, I care not to argue with people on the issue. I know what I know. I know that the Rothschilds, Illuminati, who were behind the Zionists, took over the United States money supply in 1913, days before Christmas, the winter solstice, which is a witchcraft holiday. That would be the same holiday for the secret societies, the Illuminati. Interesting? But you got books like this I'm reading. Andrew and Leslie Cockburn, Dangerous Liaison, The Inside Story of the U.S.-Israeli Covert Relationship. So they do have a covert relationship, and they're deceiving, again, we the American people. And I suppose over in Europe, they're just deceiving those people. And other countries like Brazil or Argentina, all over the world, these banksters who control the USA money supply and the money supply of countries all over the world, and they accomplished this through World War I and World War II and other events like French Revolution, Russian Revolution, Chinese Revolution, and other false flags and terrorist exercises and events. So we're being deceived, and a lot of people don't want to admit it. What's that got to do with this book? The Forbidden Legacy of a Fallen Race. Why have the Jewish people always been outcast, even according to the Encyclopedia Judaica? And I've made many videos on the Encyclopedia Judaica on different topics, from Zionism to Kabbalah to anti-Semitism. Another book I have, Secret Societies. Why is the all-seeing eye on the U.S. $1 bill? John Lawrence Reynolds, Inside the Freemasons, the Yakuza, Skull and Bones. George Bush was a Skull and Bonesman. And the world's most notorious secret organizations. I look forward to reading this and making a video, continuing to reinforce the things that I have found and what I now believe. Books like this were published in 69 and 70, 71, 73, where the powers that be are obsessed with the people on the planet that they don't need anymore. They don't want to feed anymore. They don't want using gas anymore. They don't want walking on the beaches anymore. They don't want to exist. Even the USA Georgia Guidestones. I've made videos on this book, series 35. So I've been at this a while. And it just goes on and on. The Limits to Growth by the Club of Rome, another secret society of elites. Who are these elites? What's that got to do with the legacy of a fallen race? From the ashes of angels. Who were the angels? See, go get these books. Go watch my videos. So obviously, in the channeled material I've been going over, I've been paying attention to the names of the entities that are talking to all these psychics. What's that got to do with the legacy of a fallen race? And I've been reading them up to about page 100 in this book, and it's been amazing me. So maybe I can amaze you when you watch this video. Or you can go on a used book site or a bookstore and try to find some of these books, including this book. I'm not trying to do audio books. You know, you got pictures like this. The Sphinx over there in Egypt. This man's face, obviously, with a cobra on top of his head, lion's paws and a lion body, and some kind of medallion on his chest. It's some kind of hieroglyphic symbols. Looks like it's birds and serpents. You can go look up the Sphinx on Yahoo image site, and you'll be able to see all kinds of pictures and links to the websites they came from on the internet, and click them and go read up on this stuff and see some of the things I'm talking about. And why in the city where I live are there these gargoyles on the top of the building? In cities all over the world. Serpents, bird beings, all-seeing eye. What's going on? Dragons? And what's that got to do with religion? And what kind of religion can be evil? And what's that got to do with all these threats of the catastrophe on Earth and the crazy propaganda in the news? All these fear websites, all these activities that seem a little sinister and confusing, like the fires in California. Rex Bear was making a video talking about the fires and showing pictures, and it was amazing to look at those fires. It didn't look like normal fires. The Leak Project is his website. You can look up the Leak Project, Rex Bear. But it looked like the buildings were disintegrated, like some kind of directed energy weapon. The hurricanes that hit Texas, the hurricanes that hit Florida, Puerto Rico, Costa Rica, wildfires, earthquakes. Are they using directed energy weapons? Where did they get them? Are there some kinds of other beings involved? Another thought I had the other day. Thank you, Mr. Nikolai Tesla, for bringing us wireless electricity and communications, etc. It enabled Einstein and other people to develop the nuclear bomb. Mr. Nikolai Tesla. Thank you, Mr. Nikolai Tesla, because it enabled the powers that be to develop HAARP transmitters, microwave transmitters, half a dozen or more of them strategically located all over the world, that apparently they're beaming these directed energy weapons at cities and the ground and over areas to control the weather. Thank you, Nikolai Tesla. But I'm not blaming Nikolai Tesla. He didn't see the future. But I am wondering, because Nikolai Tesla said he was not the genius. Go watch some of my videos I made on him. He said he was hearing voices. Channeling? Seeing visions. Channeling? having dreams, channeling, psychic ability, and apparently I found out through my research that many of the famous people throughout history had certain psychic abilities like Edgar Cayce. So where were they getting the information? Angels? What are angels? Beings from another dimension? Beings from another planet, parked in spaceships in orbit, who have the communication equipment to communicate to our minds, to implant visions when we sleep, our dreams? What's that got to do with this book? You see where I'm going with this? Thank you, Nikola Tesla, for enabling all these evil forces to bring these destructive technologies to bear on we the people today in 2017. And it looks like they're using them and they're getting ready for a big event. Well, should I be thanking Nikola Tesla, or is it some kind of beings, angels, demons, watchers, Nephilim? So if I read from this, maybe it'll make a little sense. All right, like I said before my opening there, I've been reading this book along with several other books for the past few days, including I finished reading this one completely, Blood Prince of the Gods. Here we go. The Forbidden Legacy of a Fallen Race. What do these two have to do with each other? And with the idea of fallen angels, like it says in the Bible, finding the earth women fair and having sex with them, and these angelic beings, Elohim, were mating with humans and creating Nephilim, giant beings. And even in the Nibiru Planet X material, some of Enki's and Enlil's, the son of Anu, some of the beings from another planet found the women on Earth fair, started having sex with them, and creating hybrid beings. This is Howard West on this one on the left. So what is it? Is it the Anunnaki, or is it Watchers fallen angels? Or are the Watchers and the Anunnaki fallen angels all one and the same thing? And is this the material behind all of these forbidden religions that are taught to these people in secret societies? Witchcraft, Kabbalah, occult, people who get initiated, illuminated. You get it? So this chapter I'm going to read, and I've been reading everything here. You can see my highlighted material. This particular one was Demonic Doctrine. I read all that. Chapter 3. Here's a picture of these fallen angels. Walked with God. The Search for the Source. I've been reading this book, like I said. Chapter 2. The Sons of God, Chapter 1. I want to show you that I've been reading it. Demonic Doctrine. Did I already show that? So anyways, I'm at chapter 6 here, where I decided I would just read this and talk about it and see where it takes us. So, connecting the dots. The Bible mentions giants and fallen angels, and the fallen angels, this is mentioned in the Bible, had sex with the human women and had some offspring giants. and they polluted the earth with all these hybrid creatures, monsters. So God had to have the great flood to wipe all this out, and he, through some angels, communicated to Noah, who apparently was a descendant of Enoch, to build a big ark and save some people. And in the book of Enoch, these kinds of stories are mentioned. And in the story of the Anunnaki, Nibiru, these kinds of things are mentioned. And in the Dead Sea Scrolls, these kinds of things are mentioned. Again, so the information's coming from scrolls, hieroglyphics in the Middle East, tablets from the Middle East, Zechariah stitchings, the Bible, the stories from the Middle East, and apparently these reptilian beings and other symbols like pyramids and eyes are on monuments all over the world. So what's going on? When giants walked the earth, if we read the book of Genesis, we can see just how out of place the story of the sons of God coming unto the daughters of men appears to be in comparison. So this is out of place now with the rest of the eccentric contents. Indeed, if it is correct to assume that the account of the fall of man and the serpent of Eden, remember in the Garden of Eden, it was a serpent that tempted Eve. The serpent of Eden reflect an abstract rendition of the fall of the Watchers. Then the whole story is included twice. So you got the Garden of Eden, you got the book of Genesis, sons of God. What is God? Spiritual being? Are the people from God's world spiritual beings called angels and watchers? So are the stories in our religions telling us some truths? According to the mysterious nature of Genesis 6, is the fact that there are neither before nor after these verses any direct references to the coming of the sons of God, the Nephilim, or the mighty men, Gibborim. And the mighty men would have been the sons of God, the angels, the watchers, called the Nephilim, mating with human women, creating the Elohim. Nor are there any references anywhere in the Bible to equate the Ha-Elohim with the watchers. This information comes only from the Enochian literature. I showed you the book of Enoch. I've been reading that and making videos, and I have another video to make on the book of Enoch, and other videos to make on the Dead Sea Scrolls, more books to make on the Bible, videos, and channeling, and all of this information is coming together. And it takes a little bit of time to watch the videos and take some notes and think about it. It's only taken me 13 years. Gaining a little ground. But I make my videos so that people don't have to take 13 years to get to the point I've come. This information comes only from the Enochian literature of the 1st and 2nd centuries BC. So 200 years before Jesus was the Book of Enoch literature found or recreated, rediscovered, 200 years before Jesus' birth. To add to the confusion, the term Elohim actually translates as the sons of the gods. So if the Nephilim are the sons of God, also called the Watchers, angels, and they were cast out, fallen angels, would you call them bad spirits or demons? Are these the entities that the evil people in the secret societies, Zionism, the Kabbalah, and all this other stuff, Rosicrucians, even this material for witchcraft and the occult, sorcery, are they worshiping these fallen angels and the offspring of these fallen angels? Are there hybrid beings on planet Earth? Are these the people behind the kings and queens and the elite wealthy people all over the world? And they're practicing their magic and their arts and skills of warfare and deception on us. And now that they have all these Nikola Tesla, etc., Einstein nuclear weapons and technologies, are they planning something much more monstrous, sinister, just beyond belief to even think about, isn't it? While the name Elohim is a female noun with an irregular plural implying not gods at all, but the sons of a goddess. So they try to dig into the roots of some of these words. So were these beings on earth that apparently are hybrid beings the sons of some kind of goddess? Never is this theological hot potato sufficiently explained, and for my purpose it seemed best to stick simply to the idea that the term referred to fallen angels alone without evoking a fixed gender. So this author, I must admit, has gone through great lengths digging into this stuff, leaving no stone unturned to try to figure out how all this connects. And I'm connecting in some of it in my own way, that I'm thinking these fallen angels, beings, watchers, Anunnaki, reptilians, gray aliens, whatever they are, spiritual beings, another dimension. These are the beings that are part of the religion of the evil secret societies dominating our planet, bringing us World War I, World War II, 9/11, and so much death and destruction for thousands of years. Don't mean to be so dramatic. Like I said, I've been pondering making this video for a few days and getting mad at myself because I haven't made a video in a while, but I wasn't quite sure where I was going with this. I kept reading this book and some other books, and it started to gel in my mind what I was, my conclusions should be. So what about the rest of the Old Testament, called the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Old Testament? Probably pronounced that word wrong. Traditionally accredited to Moses, the lawgiver. So what does Moses have to do with this? How come the Moses in the movie could throw down his staff and it turned into a snake? Isn't that magic? And the Pharaoh had his 2 magicians, one on each side, throw down 2 staffs, and that turned into 2 snakes. And then Moses' snake ate the Pharaoh's magician snakes. What are we dealing with here? And all the other magic events that Moses made happen to defeat the Egyptians and the Pharaoh, so the Hebrews could escape. We see all this stuff, even stories about some big event, catastrophe on earth caused by some passing of some planet that comes every 3,600 years. You see how the stories are connecting? Traditionally accredited to Moses the lawgiver, the Old Testament, the stuff in Genesis, the Bible, that mentions the sons of God finding the women on earth fair and mating with them, creating a hybrid beings, giants, and other types of monsters, and then God having to create a great flood, destroying everything and saving some humans all over the earth. And even in Peru and the Hopi Indians in America, North America, and elsewhere all over the planet, there are ancient monuments of facilities that were built to help some people escape death in the huge flood. So the people knew the huge flood was coming thousands of years ago. As mentioned in the Bible on some of these instances, and even the prophecy talks about 3 days of darkness looming in our future someday. with the return of Jesus, etc. Different religions have different stories. What does it all mean? How is it all connected? Could this provide me with additional clues to the origin of the Genesis chapter concerning the sons of God coming unto the daughters of men, along with their subsequent incarceration and the destruction of their offspring, the Nephilim? Glancing through the chapters of Genesis that immediately follow these enigmatic verses, we read about the generations of Noah and his subsequent role as the savior of both humanity and the animal kingdom. It is a story that all of us learn in primary school, yet like most of Genesis in the Bible, it is awkwardly worded, confusing, repetitive, and highly contradictory in its statements. The Bible says that God purged the earth of its corruption. Did you hear me? The Bible says that God purged the earth of its corruption and inequity by bringing about a universal deluge, flooding the planet. Yet nowhere does it say that the sons of God, the Nephilim, or the mighty men, were destroyed by these global cataclysms. This fact has to be assumed by the reader simply because Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives are the sole survivors of the great flood. Moreover, there is much evidence to suggest that some members of a fallen race actually survived these troubled times. And if you read about Nibiru, this planet, along with other planets and its sun, coming closer to our sun and our planets, maybe something like our solar system moves along the plane with the sun in the center and the planets surrounding it, and this other one moves along a different plane, and maybe the other system goes away and comes back every 3,600 years, and ours goes in a big circle, and every 3,600 years they kind of interact with each other. I'm theorizing. That's what the the Anunnaki material, Enki, Enlil, Anu, planet Nibiru, and the dark star material story is all about. Ironically, having some serious similar attributes to the biblical story of religion. Isn't that interesting? So a little summary here. So far it's talking about giants on earth, Noah's flood, the sons of God interacting with human women, creating an offspring, angelic beings, whatever, but the offspring were hybrid. And God wanted to destroy all of these beasts, mixing the human race with these other beings and the monsters. By the way, these are some of the similarities in the stories of Atlantis. When Atlantis sunk, a lot of those beings went to the Mexican Yucatan, South America, North America, where we have a lot of pyramid monuments and reptilian symbolisms, etc. American Indians, Mayans, Peruvians, and then they went to Egypt and other parts of the world, Africa, and there are pyramids and reptilians and all-seeing eye symbols and beings with bird heads or snake heads, lion combinations like the Sphinx. And they had big wars with the Egyptians, the Atlanteans, because they were creating hybrid beings as sex slaves, warrior slaves, entertainment slaves, monsters. And the war between the Egyptians at that time and the Atlanteans was so-called settled, and the Atlanteans ceased making these monsters with cloning and eugenics. And of course, we know our doctors and scientists today are into these same things, cloning and eugenics. and they're trying to create some kind of superhuman. It's funny how all this comes back around. All right, back to this book. It's only a few pages here. I'm trying to read and have a conversation about some of the stuff I've read in this book and other books that I've already made videos on, like the Dead Sea Scrolls or the Book of Enoch, and 400 other videos on about 200 books, from Nibiru, Planet X, Freemasons, Jewish mysticism, the Kabbalah, and so much more. Races of giants scattered throughout the Old Testament are enigmatic references to the existence of giants living in the Bible lands long after the generations of Noah. So even Steve Quayle wrote that one book, Giants, that I made the video on. Trying to see if I can see the book to tell you the series number on my bookshelf. You can look it up, Steve Quayle, Freemasonry, Satanism, Giants, or on my website, rickmiracle.com, top left-hand side. There should be a link that says all the names and books of the videos I made on YouTube, and cut and paste and make your own cheat sheet. Or go on my YouTube Rick Miracle site and just click my name, Rick Miracle. It'll take you to the home page, and then you can click videos and even sort them by oldest to newest instead of newest to oldest, and find some of these videos quicker. These terrifying individuals, these giants, back then after the flood, almost invariably feature in the wars waged against foreign raiders and the Israelite peoples by indigenous Canaanite tribes. So before Palestine was named Palestine, it was named Canaan. And of course now it's Israel. And the land of Canaan back then, or that area, encompassed much more land than Israel today. And apparently the people who are trying to bring us this new age and new world order want to bring about some original boundaries to the property owned by the Israelites thousands of years ago, including Iraq and Lebanon and Syria and so much more. And they're trying to bring all this about. So that's why they brought about 9/11, World War I and World War II, because the Arabs in Turkey and people in the other areas around there, the Ottoman Empire, controlled all the Middle East. So we hear very little about that, but that seems to be one of the main purposes of World War I, World War II, was the destruction of the forces that controlled the Middle East, the Ottoman Empire. It all makes sense once you start seeing some of the clues. Canaan, formerly Palestine, now Israel, being the name given to Palestine, Western Syria, says it right here, and Lebanon in Old Testament times. So they're trying to get their properties back to resemble the same property as Old Testament times. And back then, there were these giant beings, these hybrid. So it does make you wonder, what is the religion of the historic Jews, when mostly they were focused on the Kabbalah, which was related to witchcraft and sorcery, as mentioned in the Encyclopedia Judaica itself. I've made many hours of videos on that. You can go watch my videos. Reading from the Encyclopedia Judaica books I have, all 16 of them, that stack up about this big. So the stuff in those books we can rely on. It was published, those Encyclopedia Judaica books were published in Israel. They weren't really meant for the common man or woman of the world that the Jewish people call goy or goyim, which means cattle. Apparently they don't think some of us are smart enough to look up stuff and study. They really do think a lot of people are just too dumb as rocks, to know anything. I disagree, and they do cause a lot of hardships and division amongst we the people, so we will be distracted and not take out the time to do this research. That's why they're not worried about putting that material in the Encyclopedia Judaica. But if you go online and use bookstores or whatever and buy the set or watch my videos, I read from the pages. You will be amazed what they talk about. I didn't know during the Civil War in the United States, General Ulysses Grant exiled all the Jewish people from the Tennessee territories. That's in my videos, out of the Encyclopedia Judaica. And I also read in the Encyclopedia Judaica, for 2,000 years, wherever Jewish people went, they ran into huge problems, often being accused of sacrificing children in some kind of religious ceremony. To what kind of gods? Fallen angels? See how I'm putting this together? Starts to make a little sense. I can almost understand why quite a few people have been assassinated trying to get the truth out. Apparently, it wasn't that long ago. If you divulge the secret goings-on of the Freemasons and other secret societies, you would be killed quickly. If we look at the later chapters of Genesis, we will find references to giants living in the age of the prophet Abraham. And who does Esther Hicks channel on her videos? You can go watch on YouTube or her website. And she does lectures. The being she channels is named Abraham. I've been noticing these channeled people like Jane Roberts channeling Seth, etc. I've made quite a few videos on numerous books of channelers, and I just ordered another one that I'm waiting on getting from Angela Smith, PhD, and another author. Should be interesting. The prophet Abraham, a date usually fixed around 2000 BC. So we take this stuff back to 2000 BC, and of course we're at 2017 now, so that would have been 4017 years ago. Several verses deal with how Chedorlaomer, the king of ancient Elam, a country placed in the highlands of the southwest Iran. And even in the news today, Trump's appointed Secretary of State Tillerson is overseas in Saudi Arabia and Iraq, organizing those two countries to plan on an offensive against Iran. I've been making lots of videos on these countries, including the Phoenix Journals, where I learned that apparently the kings of Saudi Arabia, no small country, is it, who were big buddies with George Bush Jr. and George Bush Sr.'s, their financial backing in the oil industries, and apparently are secretly Jewish elites controlling a Muslim country. So they would have sentiment with Israel. All this stuff makes sense. And Tillerson, who was in the news last week, was organizing Saudi Arabia or helping them to negotiate a deal with Iraq to have an offensive against Iran, something they've been wanting to do for quite a while. And I think it has everything to do with what I'm reading about, this religion of these fallen angels. Fallen angels. Third of them were kicked out of heaven, apparently, according to biblical stories. And funny thing also, it was a serpent that tempted Adam and Eve. And then that was the original sin for humans. Why did God blame humans? when it was fallen angels that were teaching mankind all the evil things to do? That kind of confuses me. Why blame mankind for that? The serpent in the garden tempting Eve, lying to her, deceiving her, telling her that eating of the apple would do no harm. And since then, apparently, we humans have to work in the dirt and suffer as punishment for the crime of Adam and Eve, but it was the serpent, the fallen angel, who tempted her. All right, anyways, that's just what it seems to be, how everything goes together. So several verses deal with Sherdor-Lormer, the king of ancient Elam, a country placed in the highlands of southwest Iran, encounters no less than 3 tribes of giants. So back then in ancient stories, there were 3 tribes of giants, hybrid human beings who had mixed with other types of beings, who rise up against him and are defeated by his forces in the land of Canaan. They are listed as Raphaim in Ashtaroth, Kiranim, the Zuzams in Ham, and the Emins in Shaven and Cathrithim. Later in the book of Deuteronomy in the Bible, which deals with the wanderings of the Jewish tribes, following the exodus out of Egypt at the time of Moses, the texts speak of Canaan as a land of Raphaim, giants, or giants, where the Raphaim dealt therein aforetime, because of their reported great stature. In many translations of the Bible from the original Hebrew, the word giants is rendered instead of Raphaim. Deuteronomy in the Bible also tells us of the Ammonites, then called Zamzumis, a great people and many and tall as the Anakim. As tall as the Anakim. Who then were the Anakim? And how might they relate to the Watchers and Nephilim? So apparently the beings, the Watchers, fallen angels, had sex with humans, created a hybrid being called Nephilim. Reaching for my weightier leather-bound edition, this is the author speaking here in this book. So if you want to read all the details, go get this book. It seems to do an amazing job of looking at the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Book of Enoch, the Bible, and so much other material, putting 2 and 2 together. And me working as much as I have, reading so many other books, including books about giants, and Freemasons, Albert Pike, Rosicrucians, channeled material, Pole Shift, Theophist Society, Helena Blavatsky, Alice Bailey, Aleister Crowley, UFOs. I'm looking at my bookcase. The Encyclopedia of the Psychic World, Mysterious Monuments, Jim Mars, books by Jim Mars, Text Mars, David Icke, William Cooper, and so many more. So some of the dots are being connected here. So he looked up, I turned to the edition of Cruden's Concordance, it's some kind of encyclopedia. The complete listing of all the names, terms, and expressions found in the Bible. There are a number of further entries for the Anakim, the most important of which is found in the Book of Numbers. That's another book part of the Bible, the Old Testament. So in the Book of Numbers, and there we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak. So was Anak a watcher, a fallen angel? which come of the Nephilim, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. So these humans compared themselves to these other beings. They compared themselves as grasshoppers. So the Anakim are specifically cited as the descendants of the legendary Nephilim. So the Elohim, the fallen angels, mated with human women. Those beings were called Nephilim. They mated again, and they had other beings after that, maybe diluting this hybrid DNA. And these might be beings that they call shapeshifters, reptilian beings, and their controlled entity gray aliens, and so many others. Even in that book I'm getting by the channeled material of Angela Smith, has a lot of details about this stuff. Can't wait to get the book. A land that eateth, like eat, up the inhabitants thereof, and all the people that we saw in it are men of great stature. Reading it, it actually names the sons of Anak, or Anakim, as Ahaman, Shashai, Talami, although no further details are given concerning their appearance. They are encountered by the spies sent out by Joshua, Moses' successor, to report back on the inhabitants of Hebron, or the Kadruth Abra, the chief city of the Anakim, situated in what is today southern Palestine, and before they are attacked and finally defeated by one of these spies named Caleb. So one interesting story I've read from many sources, but apparently when the Hebrews had escaped captivity of the Egyptians, the Pharaoh, God, some being in the sky, apparently riding with a cloud, would meet in the bushes with Moses to give him instructions. And this God said to Moses that he was going to give them the land of Canaan to be the homeland for these Hebrews called Israel today. Now, the ancient Hebrews lost that land because they broke the commandments that God gave them. FYI. But anyways, they were told to go to that land according to the biblical story. And the Canaanites, apparently giant beings, they were to destroy these giant beings. But Moses, a couple of his advisors, the Hebrews, said, before we go into that land, shouldn't we send in some spies to see what's there? And so they chose 2 men of each of the tribes, I think it was 10 people, to go into the land of Canaan and spy before they invaded it and killed everybody and took the land, because God had given it to them, which they had lost later on because they did not carry out the commandments of God. But anyways, when these men went into the land of Canaan, leaving from Egypt, they saw these giant beings. And they were terrified, and they went back to Moses, and 8 of the 10 said, no way should we attack the land of Canaan. These men are giants. We are like grasshoppers. But 2 of the men said to Moses that if God told us to do it, let's go do it. They had no fear. So because of the other 8 having fear and the Hebrews would not obey God's command, Moses had to take the people back into the desert for 40 years. And part of the commandment by God was that not a single one of the family of the 8 who refused to go attack the entities, the beings in the land of Canaan, not a single one of them would be alive. Their next generation would be alive. They would come back in 40 years and kill all the giants in the land of Canaan. And according to the biblical story, that's exactly what they did. So the Anakin were destroyed, but survivors of their race probably lived on. So apparently the giants were destroyed, but apparently some of them lived on elsewhere, whatever, and certainly did so in the minds of the Old Testament chronicles. They may have been three brothers from the town of Hebron, one of the Palestinians' most ancient cities, but there is every indication that they were also a powerful race in their own right who inhabited Canaan from very early times. And remember, this was after the Great Flood, when the land of Canaan was invaded by the Hebrews because God gave them that land. So apparently there were some giants that survived, or some kind of hybrid beings that survived the Great Flood. So when God ordered the Hebrews to go in there and kill them, whoever God was, maybe it was some kind of beings or even fallen angels, and they had extraordinary powers. The Hebrews, if they were just to go, probably didn't have to fear, because apparently these clouds would show up and lightning would come out of these clouds and start smiting and killing all of the enemy. Just some interesting things about ancient biblical stories. We need to remember that when we're talking about the reality of today and all the threats and all this stuff about UFO aliens and the technologies that the governments appear to have now with these HARP microwave transmitters and things causing those cities and buildings in California to just be incinerated like a, what do they call that weapon they have? Directed energy beam? We don't know. Are they testing the directed energy beam to bring about this prophesized New Age, New World Order? What's it have to do with the stuff I'm reading here in these beings? I think everything. That's my opinion from the research I've been doing. So the Anakin were destroyed, but the survivors of their race probably lived on, and certainly did so in the minds of the Old Testament chroniclers. So the Old Testament is actually ancient stories, and in the Old Testament, in the Bible, apparently a lot of this material is there. So if you know what I'm talking about now and you've been doing some research, going back and reading the Old Testament now, you, like me, would probably understand it a little better. You'd get an aha moment and say, well, now that makes sense. They may have been three brothers from the town of Hebron, one of Palestine's most ancient cities. And there is every indication that they were also a very powerful race in their own right who inhabited Canaan from the earliest times. The word Anak is generally taken by Jewish scholars to mean long-necked, and the men with necklaces, conjuring an immediate image of the ring collars worn even today by certain tribes in Central Africa. Was this yet another physical feature of the original fallen race? Long necks bearing ring necklaces. So we know that some African tribes use devices to stretch their necks and change their shape of their head and other odd things. And weirdly enough, if you go on your city streets here in the United States, a lot of people are looking pretty freaky. Remember, they came out with Pokemon when I was raising two boys for a while, and I said that in the future, the young people, now older, would look like monsters and Pokemon characters with demonic tattoos and metal piercings and all this other stuff. And sure enough, that's what happened. And now they're coming out with new kinds of propaganda and games with Pokemon. So there is some kind of sinister mind control material propaganda out there that's turning normal people into kind of freakish people. We all know what it's all about. The rainbow agenda, transgenderism, pansexualism, sex with anything, and all this other craziness and murderous movies and just complete beyond beyond understanding violence and viciousness. Normalization, even that TV show that's the new season started called Lucifer. They're trying to portray Lucifer as not the bad guy, but the punisher of bad guys. You gotta pay attention when you see this stuff, how they switch words around. So Lucifer's never really been bad. He was sent here by God to punish bad people, even though apparently the bad people worship Lucifer, the light bearer. The enormous size of the Anakim is, of course, to be taken with a large pinch of salt. Yet why were the Anakim seen as direct lineal descendants of the Nephilim, the progeny of the fallen angels, who were supposedly wiped out at the time of the Great Flood? You see how all that came together in one sentence in this book on page 65? The Anakim were seen as a direct descendants of the Nephilim. The Nephilim were the children of the fallen angels and human women, and they were supposedly wiped out at the time of the Great Flood. No explanation is given, and the reader is left to assume that they must have been linked in some way to the family of Noah, who apparently is a descendant of Enoch, who himself bore the traits of the Watchers and the Nephilim. So apparently Noah, who built the ark for some humans and animals, we all know about Noah's ark. You learn about that in kindergarten, grade school. But apparently in the Bible, his sons walked into his tent, and apparently he had a reptilian spine. Putting the dots together, connecting the dots. King Og of Bashan, more renowned of the giants of Canaan, was the legendary King Og of the land of Bashan, who with his brother Sihon controlled vast areas of land that stretched for many hundreds of miles in every direction. This would be in Canaan, called Palestine, now called Israel. That's why they had World War I and World War II, was to be able to create the state of Israel by taking the Palestinians' land. They couldn't do it for a couple hundred years prior because the Ottoman Empire controlled it out of Turkey. And so they had to have World War I and World War II. And then, of course, as they moved along to accelerate the program of the New Age, New World Order, they had to have 911. And then to kind of mind control we people all over the planet, they're having the global warming threats and controlling the weather apparently and other things with HAARP transmitters, microwave transmitters. Go look up HAARP, H-A-A-R-P. And they're bringing us the 5G network, microwave transmissions everywhere that will permeate every aspect of our reality. And apparently using directed energy weapons to control the weather or disintegrate buildings like 911, according to Judy Wood on her book on 911, and burn down entire blocks of homes in California that are just disintegrated. Look at the pictures. Go watch some other people's YouTube videos. That's what they're saying. It takes 6,000 degrees to melt porcelain bathtubs. And wildfires can only get up to 13 or 1400 degrees. Rex Bear talks about on the Leak Project videos. And a lot of people talk about the directed energy beams used on 911. And a lot of other people are talking about incidences all over the world, earthquakes and other things caused by directed energy weapons. And apparently there are military websites that have the specs and information about directed energy weapons, and the HAARP microwave transmitters, and the Gwen towers, and the many cell phone towers. sonic transmitters, pulsars, laser beams on the noses of planes that can just go zoom along and just start burning everything in front of them. Are they testing these weapons out? What God told all these secret societies and elites who operate behind the scenes, worshiping apparently some kind of fallen angels or some kind of hybrid beings, reptilians with gray aliens, making deals, putting up even guidestones in the United States and Georgia, calling for this world depopulation. Go look up the Georgia guidestones. Building FEMA camps, having Jade Helm 15 in 2015, military exercises. All kinds of things going on all over the world right now. Looks like we are under attack. It doesn't seem to be just an illusion. You can see what's going on. They're trying to cover it up and attribute it to Mother Nature, an act of God. If it is an act of God, God must be pretty mad at the rest of us. Back to the book. Being himself a descendant of the Rephaim, this would be this King Og. Og is said to have resided in Ashtaroth and at Eridia. So these are places over there in the Middle East, Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, the places that are being destroyed as we all watch after 9/11. But they cause all this distraction in the news here in the USA and I'm sure the world. So most people are putting two and two together and paying attention to what's really going on. All right, the latter being a giant city identified with the modern Jordanian town of Durat, some 30 miles east of the southern end of the Sea of Galilee. Here, archaeologists have uncovered a vast subterranean city cut deep into the bedrock beneath the existing buildings of the town, although how it might be linked with King Og is uncertain. The kingdom of Bashan, the so-called land of the Rephaim, the giants, supposedly extended from Mount Hermon in the north of Canaan to Galad in the south, a region geographically placed on the east side of the Jordan River. It is here that almost 600 years before, according to the Bible, the Elamite king Sherdinloman apparently smote the Rephaim. So this king destroyed the Rephaim giants. King Og's own ancestors in the age of the patriarch Abraham, one of the leading male figures. It is also interesting to note that Og was said to have reigned in Mount Hermon, the most northerly point of his kingdom and the location where, according to the book of Enoch, the rebel watchers descended. So apparently this Mount Hermon in the Middle East is where these watchers descended from heaven. And then, of course, they discovered the human women, found them to be desirable, had sex with them, and created the Nephilim, giant beings. A lot of these women died giving birth to these giant babies. Their bodies burst. I have my own theory on some of this stuff. Isn't it convenient after World War II that this stuff starts to get popularized amongst we the people, the public? The Dead Sea Scrolls, the Book of Enoch, and then all that UFO alien material. And it's just been escalating and escalating and escalating. I have the books. So I think it's planned dissemination of material. They're trying to change our memory of history. Why? Can it be good for us? Now you know why they had 911. World War I, World War II. Cost them a lot of money. Took over control of the USA money supply. Again, on 1913. They were banned from controlling our money for 30, 40 years prior to that. And three presidents were assassinated. Some were poisoned and managed to live. I've made videos on those books. So I'm kind of familiar with what I'm talking about. So back to this material. Various Hebrew myths outside the Bible cite King Og as the progeny of Haya, a son of the fallen angel Shamyaza, and a woman who subsequently became the wife of Ham. These are biblical characters. The son of Noah. Og was said to have escaped the deluge, the great flood, by clinging to a rope ladder attached to Noah's ark and being daily fed through a porthole by Noah himself. That's a crazy story. So here's Noah, his wife, his sons, and their wives, and all the animals. And you got a giant hanging on the outside. And through a porthole, Noah's giving him some food. He took pity on the giant after he swore to repent and become his slave. Afterwards, however, Og apparently resumed his wicked ways. All right, quaint as the story of Og's survival of the deluge may seem, it makes nonsense of biblical chronology, for if this giant king had existed at the time of the Great Flood, which is seen by theologians to have taken place in 2348 BC. So did the Great Flood happen in 2348 BC? Add 2,000 years to that because this is 2017. So that would be 4348 years ago. And then, of course, you add 17 to that. So that's 5. So that would be 2368. So 4,368 years ago. Almost 4363. So 4,360 years ago was the Great Flood. Not too long ago. Then he would have been around 1,100 years old by the time of Moses. So Moses was around, and the Hebrews were escaped from the enslavement of the Egyptians 1,100 years after the Great Flood. Stories such as this were almost certainly concocted at a very late stage in the development of the Hebrew Jewish myth and legend, their purpose being so to account for the existence in Canaan of the outsized indigenous tribes such as the Anakim giants, the Ammon giants, the Rephaim giants, the Zazum giants, as well as the peoples under the leadership of King Og, who were encountered by the first Israelites when they entered this foreign land from Mesopotamia at the beginning of the 2nd millennium BC. Many of these giant races were quite obviously looked upon as actual lineage descendants of the Nephilim, whose existence must have been entrenched in the minds of the first Israelites. So you see why I'm saying the Israelites, the Jewish people, this is part of their religion. Part of the Kabbalah and all this other mysticism, fallen angels, watchers. Apparently these, according to the book of Enoch, these fallen angels, these watchers, were teaching humans the arts of magic. Explains a lot here. Yet there is very little evidence whatsoever outside Jewish religious literature for the existence of these giant races, either from contemporary sources of the time or from archaeological discoveries made over the past 100 years or so of biblical exploration. And when I read this, I was a little bit in disbelief what this author said, because I am aware that many times I do have that book called The Giants by Steve Quayle. I made videos on that book. And apparently even people in Ohio and other places all over the world, when people are digging, they find these giant skeletons. The heads of these beings were the size of a washing machine. Well, anyways, government agencies like the Smithsonian are sent out and confiscate this stuff, and all the people are threatened with their lives or imprisonment and made to shut up. So somebody doesn't want this information out there. A lot of this material I've gone over in previous videos. So there is evidence that these beings did exist, and there's plenty of stories in the Bible and other historical documents, including Steve Quayle's book, The Giants. I've made videos on it and shown all the pictures. You can go watch. At first sight, this may seem a disconcerting realization, and one which has grave implications for the historic reality of the Watchers, the Nephilim, in more distant times. However, there is no reason why giants should not have existed in the Bible lands in distant ages. Variations of anything up to 18 inches between individuals of different races or cultures was not unusual in prehistoric times. So this author's sort of discrediting this, but I think not. Indeed, such differences are still common today. One has only to look at the American basketball team to see these 7-foot-tall giants we see on TV. From a mythological context, it is this distinction alone which leads us to evoke terms such as giant and dwarfed, not to the specific size of cultures or races as a whole. So yes, we have had very tall humans, and we have very small humans all over the planet. So could there have been more of one and less of the other, or even beings of a more substantial proportion, really giants, as described in the Bible? And pictures you can look in Steve Quayle's book, or go online, Yahoo image site, and put in giants and see the pictures for yourself and the websites that they are linked to, and read up on it. And you will believe that yes, indeed, there were these ancient giant beings. Were they aliens? Were they some kind of hybrid beings created by some beings from some other place, watchers, archons, Anunnaki aliens? I don't know. Mixing two DNAs does combine to create some very weird beast, as many of the black operations projects of the government have discovered. There are pictures of these monsters they created by messing around mixing DNA, cloning, and eugenics. Lord only knows where these evil forces are going to take our world. It might be time for we the people to wake up. Mention must also be made here of the most famous giant of all in biblical tradition, and this is Goliath, David the shepherd boy's gigantic opponent. So everybody knows about David and Goliath in the Bible, most people, but I am aware that many young people today aren't being taught the Bible, and they're totally oblivious to these stories, and I think that's by intention, regrettably. They control our school systems, the medical facilities, the economic system. so much more communication system. They're spying on us. Apparently they're controlling the weather, and so much more, poisoning we the people with toxins, vaccines, fluoridation in the water. We are under attack. I keep saying that. And I keep trying to figure out just who is behind it. That's why I study this material. So David, the shepherd boy's gigantic opponent, who is said to have belonged to the tribe of Gath and to have fought alongside the Palestinian army, in the well-known story presented in the 2 Samuel in the Bible, this enormous figure of a man was said to have been 10 feet tall and to have worn a copper coat, some kind of armor, weighing an incredible 120 pounds of armor. He also carried a spear weighing 15 pounds, which apparently possessed a shaft like a weaver's beam. So the guy had to be a really big giant. Maybe 22-foot tall man. Could a person of this size and strength ever have walked the earth? The answer is very possibly yes, for despite the lack of archaeological evidence for the presence in the past of actual giant races, and again, I disagree. Look up giants, Smithsonian, Steve Quayle, and there is evidence. There is compelling evidence to suggest that individuals of this size did once exist. So the author of this book is agreeing. All right, continuing. Too many outsized human remains, worked tools, and stone coffins have been unearthed in different parts of the world, from ancient times down to the present era. And many of us are already aware of huge monuments that people of my size could not have built. For such traditions to be dismissed out of hand. So the author is saying there's lots of evidence to support that these beings did exist. Look at all the hieroglyphics in the Egyptian pyramids inside and outside at the monuments. Bird-headed people, serpent people. These accounts, often published in sane and sober journals and books, so there's many books out there on these topics, refer mainly to isolated discoveries and therefore do not constitute hard evidence for the existence of a whole race of giants. Despite such shortcomings, it does not follow that the bold accounts of giant races roaming the earth in Old Testament times are completely worthless. Far from it, they appear vital to any understanding of the roots behind the terms and expressions used in the chroniclers of Genesis, the Old Testament of the Bible, to recall the former existence of the angelic race who fell from heaven. So we know they're trying to discredit Christianity and get people to believe that Jesus was a myth, that there's too much evidence to the contrary. Even the psychics, the channelers, prophets mention Jesus and other beings. So the source of the Nephilim. So remember, you have a couple sets of entities here. Fallen angels. Apparently, God sent these angels to look over mankind, to take care of us. But instead, these angels, some of them, saw the human women and became enamored with them, attracted to them, and had sex with them, and then they had hybrid babies called Nephilim. Elohim mated with humans, produced Nephilim, and the Elohim were thought of as angels, fallen angels, or some kind of beings that came from the sky. So the source of the Nephilim. The book of Numbers specifically refers to the Anakim as descendants of the Nephilim. So the Nephilim, which were the offspring of the Elohim and humans, the Nephilim, they had more offspring, and so they weren't offsprings of the Watchers or the sons of God, but of the Nephilim, who were offsprings of the sons of God and Watchers and women. This is important, for it implies that at the time of Moses, this is after the Great Flood. Remember, Noah was before the Great Flood. Excuse me. He's the one that built the ark and put some humans and animals to survive the Great Flood. So, it implies at the time of Moses, when the core material for the Old Testament was being established and recorded for the first time. Only the term Nephilim was used to denote the giant race who had fallen because of its lust for mortal women in antediluvian times. If for a moment we disregard the contentious lines of Genesis 6 as much later interpolations, see below, it would appear that other terms for the fallen race, such as Watchers, sons of God, were clearly unknown to the Israelite tribes at the time of Moses, 1300 BC. So human history appears to go back about, 4,600 years. And then 13 years after that was when the Hebrews were led by Moses, who was raised by the Pharaoh, the Egyptians, and apparently they had some knowledge of some kind of magic, which involved some kind of communication with these other worldly beings. And today they're trying to rewrite history, the story of all this, and normalize our thinking of alien beings, telling us about Palladians and Orions and reptilians and gray aliens and avians and all this stuff. Apparently there have been beings living on this planet all the time and have been manipulating and using we humans since then. This implies the Nephilim, the word meaning for fallen ones, or those who have fallen, was the original name given by the Israelites, the Hebrews, to the fallen angels. And some people are trying to create the thinking now that this is part of planet Nibiru and the Anunnaki beings, that they are returning. So they're mixing all this into this New Age, New World Order propaganda, and they've done World War I, World War II, 9/11, and all these terror events and so much more. And apparently they have superior technological weapons, direct beam weapons, microwave transmitters, weather control, weather warfare. So they're not fooling around. So it might behoove we people to find out what we are talking about. Who and what is God? And is the God that they're talking about here and these beings actually from the spiritual realm of God, because we are spiritual beings in these biological bodies? What is the religion of all these secret societies? The Kabbalists, witchcraft covens, the Wiccans, the Rosicrucians, high-level Freemasons, and all these other secret societies. The symbols are the same for most of them. Strange confirmation of this suggestion comes from rereading Genesis 6, verse 2, speaks of the sons of God coming unto the daughters of men, while in contrast verse 4 states firmly that the Nephilim were in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came unto the daughters of men, and also after that, the meaning was clear enough that there were two quite separate traditions entangled here. One concerning the fallen race, known to the early Hebrews, they use Israelites in this book, as the Nephilim, and the other concerning the Elohim, the sons of God, who are identified directly with the watchers of the Enochian tradition. I've made videos on the Book of Enoch. I've got a couple of the Book of Enochs. They were found in different locations like Ethiopia, Babylon, Palestine, and then you got the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Egyptian tablets, Zechariah Stitchins. So again, and I say this emphatically, can we trust this stuff? Who interpreted these documents? What message are they trying to tell we the people? And we can see with what they've been doing to bring about this new age and new world order, they are not taking small steps to change the history or what was perceived as the history of humankind. They're murdering lots of people and apparently using these directed energy weapons, whether it's droughts or excessive water, hurricanes, earthquakes. So it seems, tornadoes. So was this assumption correct? Could I find some kind of scholastic support for such a contention? So he's looking for support that the Elohim are different beings from the Nephilim, and he's trying to understand who these sons of God and watchers are, and he's using these different resources. Been quite interesting me reading this book the last few days. I wouldn't have thought I would get so many aha moments and going, oh my, I didn't know that. Oh, it makes more sense now. Once again, I would not be the first person to point out the seemingly paradoxical reference in Genesis 6.4 to two quite independent fallen races, for theologians have long pondered over this puzzle. Yet only one modern-day Hebrew scholar, and here we go, a Jewish scholar, and the Jewish people look down on the rest of the people, not all Jewish people. So we're told. The Hebrew scholar has attempted to explain its presence. So I'm not so confident that all these Hebrew scholars rewriting human history are trying to do it for our benefit. Has attempted to explain its presence. In an important article published in the Hebrew Union College Annual of 1939, so this stuff has been building up and going on a long time. Remember, they did bring us World War I, World War II, and 6 months prior to World War I, they took over the U.S. federal money supply, where they were banned from controlling our money for almost 50 years. Before that, the United States, they had controlled it. It was a big political debate and argument, and presidents died in the United States over who could control our money. And it was happening in other countries all over the world. And these people who were taking control of our money, putting the all-seeing eye on the U.S. $1 bill, we can see by the symbolism, the all-seeing eye in the Egyptian hieroglyphics, the all-seeing eye even in the Ecuadorian gold tablets, the gold of the gods by Erich von Däniken. Erich. So what are these beings that seem to want to control everything from behind the scenes and who have seemed to make a decision that they want to take control of this planet again, but they think there's too many people. They don't need them. Now they have all these technologies that they seemingly gave to Nikola Tesla and other people who became famous through dreams, visions, and voices and assistance, which has been happening throughout history. Under the rather uninspiring title of the mythological background of Psalms 82, Julian Morgenstern, I thought, oh my God, this name Morgenstern jumped right at me, because Morgan Chase is the banks that run our world now. The name Morgan is quite popular, and it goes back here that this Hebrew scholar, Morgenstern, came to the quite astonishing conclusion that there must have been two quite separate occasions when the angels fell from heaven. Once through lust, and the second time through pride. So were these beings cast out of some other heavenly realm twice? Despite the originality of this solution, in my view, it simply muddles the picture. For the easiest answer would be to accept that two separate renditions of the same story somehow became confusingly joined by the compilers of Genesis, the Old Testament, in the Bible. On the one hand, there was the story of the Nephilim, the fallen race, seen by the early Hebrews, and perhaps even by the indigenous tribes of Canaan, as the progenitors of a much later giant race in the Bible. And today there's a lot of talk of hybrid beings, these elites who run our world right now, and many videos on YouTube and pictures and people saying that they have seen these people shapeshift. While on the other there was the quite separate stories concerning the Elohim, the sons of God, the Watchers in the book of Enoch. So again, when I talk about the book of Enoch, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Zechariah Stitchins interpreting the cuneiform tablets in Samaria and Babylon, the London museums, and even when they attacked and invaded Iraq, a lot of military teams were making a beeline to the museums. They were after something. And archaeological discoveries are announced in the news every day while we're having all these wars and destruction in the Middle East. It's all focused on those historical pieces of evidence, documents, and stones and etchings. They're looking for something like an Indiana Jones movie. And Hitler was looking for something. What are they looking for? I suspect it's all connected. In the same way, the traditions have become fused as one to form the enigmatic verses of Genesis 6. So go read Genesis 6 in your Bible. Put more of the story together in your own mind. And you can find Genesis 6, I'm sure, on the internet. While in the Enochian literature, the Nephilim were demoted to being purely the giant offspring of. And they have this picture here of these cities in Jerusalem and Judea, where all the action is going on now. They're destroying and taking over Syria. They're even targeting Iran right now, where Tillerson, sent by Donald Trump to get the Saudi Arabians and the now controlled Iraq to gang up together to be against Iran. There is a plan, and it's not going to stop, in my opinion. And there's a picture in this book of the territory. So it just helps us, me in my mind, to see why and what's really going on. Why are they doing all these crazy things? So I don't think I'll be able to finish this chapter in this video, but I'll read on, do what I can. So I left off here was, while in the Enochian literature, the book of Enoch, the Nephilim were demoted to being purely the giant offspring of the sons of God. Everything pointed towards the fact that the lines of Genesis 6 had either been added to the Bible at a much later date, or else that they had been seriously tampered with to include two quite independent origins of the Nephilim and the Watchers. For the moment, as was important to examine the rest of the Old Testament to see whether it could throw further light on the origins and age of the story of the Watchers. So this author has done an in-depth investigation trying to put this puzzle together. And me, after making videos going on 4 years and using about 200 books and magazines and other articles and pictures and studying and reading books since 2005, 17 years, 13 years, I'm seeing some of this stuff too. Takes a little bit of work. The goat of Azuzel. Now this is a very interesting chapter here. Only one other possible reference to the fall of the angels is to be found in the Old Testament. According to the book of Leviticus, each year on the feast of Yom Kippur, this is one of the Jewish holidays, one where they make this agreement to, I think, not honor any promises they make in the coming year, and they sing songs according to Henry Ford in his material, the books I've gone over, The International Jew, The World's Foremost Problem, and so much other material I've made about these Jewish people, by books made, written, and speeches told by famous Jewish people. So not all Jewish people are into these ancient fallen angel worship. Some Jewish people have stuck with Moses and the instructions from God, the Ten Commandments. So that's part of the focus. I'm trying to find out who is who. And then, of course, they created the idea of anti-Semitism so that they could discredit or accuse anybody who tries to speak out against this stuff and expose the truth. Even when I was talking about that I didn't agree with on a comment on a press release on the internet, that I didn't think it was a good idea for Tillerson to try to get the Saudi Arabia and Iraq to gang up on Iran, when we know that Israel's behind it all, these people who are into this new religion they're trying to bring us with these fallen angels. The commenter said I was a traitor. And another guy said, I guess you hate Jews. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. If I'm going to hate anybody, and I don't hate anybody, it's the people who are doing all the murdering and the people behind the secret societies. They're into these fallen angel worship. I can agree that I don't like them. I wouldn't say that I seethe with hate or think about it every day. I don't. I do research and I share. I'm trying to find out what the heck is going on. I didn't know that. What did I know about Jewish people? I didn't know that they were the ones behind it. Not all Jewish people. And I know that these people behind this occult, Kabbalah, magic, witchcraft, occult worship and religion are not just Jewish people. They've made deals with some kind of devil, metaphorically speaking. Some kind of beings, and these beings do them favors to the detriment to the rest of us. I think that's bad. They control the United Nations. They control our presidents. They control these high-tech weapons that they have today. They control the media. They control the toxins and poisons in our food and our water and in the air. I'm not happy with them. So does that make me an anti-Semite? I'm controlled with I'm opposed to the dumping of chemicals in the sky. I'm opposed to these insane, vicious movies and other things on TV and TV shows and propaganda, deceiving and misleading our children and families and friends, dealing in drugs, epidemics, plagues, laboratories producing even more modern plagues. I'm opposed to all that. So they have this, now in this book, the Yom Kippur holiday, the Day of Atonement. Listen to this. The Israelites would sacrifice 2 he-goats. So it says in this book that one of the normal holidays of the Jewish people is to sacrifice 2 he-goats. One animal was offered up to God so that he might absolve the Jews of their sins. So what kind of God would absolve them of their sins because they were killing a goat? I don't think that's a kind of religion that would even be anything similar to Christianity or any other religion. That's not into the black arts, Satanism, Luciferianism, demonic beings. While the other was set aside, the other goat was sacrificed for Azazel, who is named as the leader of the Watchers, these fallen angels, in the book of Enoch. So you see what I'm saying? Apparently, these people who have had a problem with the rest of us throughout history, into the Kabbalah and Zionism, are worshiping or making sacrifices to fallen angels. During the sacrificial rite, the priest is said to have placed both hands on the head of the goat for Azuzel, and to have confessed over him all the iniquities of the children of Israel, and all of their transgressions, and all of their sins. He would then send the animal away by the hand of a fit man into the wilderness, where it would plunge to its death over a steep cliff, recalling the plight of the fallen angel Azuzel, who was seen as perpetually bound and chained in the wilderness. In much later times, a red or scarlet ribbon was apparently tied to the goat's head to represent these sins, since it states to Isaiah that through your sins by the scarlet they shall be as white as snow. And we know that these people, famous people, many places have this red string they tie around their wrist. You suppose it has anything to do with that? Further explaining on the barbaric ritual of a scapegoat. So this god of theirs allows them to have a barbaric ritual of a scapegoat. A scapegoat is somebody they use to blame on something, like that Las Vegas shooting and many others. How these shooters instantly wind up dead and taking the blame for the entire event. A scapegoat. And apparently they make their god happy by finding a scapegoat. As the goat is referred to instead of Azuzel in the authorized version of the Bible are the words of Rabbi Moses ben Naaman, who in the 12th century AD wrote. 12th century AD, 800 years ago. God has commanded us, however, to send a goat on Yom Kippur to the ruler whose realm is in the places of desolation. From the emanation of his power came destruction and ruin. His portion among the animals is the goat. And goat is a symbol for the devil. The Freemasons ride a goat. Supposedly they ride a goat around naked. And they put a goat on the Hoover Dam and the giant projection for, I think, a whole month. So a lot of places you'll see the symbol for the goat. The upside down star with the circle around it is a figure for the goat, the horns. The devil sign, I think, is like this for the goat that we see all our politicians and everybody doing. Of course, they do the all-seeing eye and the 3-6 symbol. All this stuff comes together. It's this religion. So this book was a little bit enlightening to me to put 2 and 2 together. The demons are part of his realm and are called in the Bible Serem, legendary he-goat fostered by Azuzel. Whether or not this suggests the survival in the Middle Ages of a scapegoat ritual is not specified, although it does show the importance it must have held for the Jews in the medieval era. It says it on the top line there. I'm not trying to talk about Jews. That's what it says in this book. The scapegoat was conceived as embodying the spirit of Azul, the fallen angel, and in doing so it was able to carry away the sins of the Jews, a role which Jesus Christ was voluntarily to undertake in much later Christian traditions. So they're not denying Jesus here. The association of the scapegoat with both sin and impurity eventually led to it becoming an animal of Satan. That's what it says here. And the devil in early Christianity. A figurative connection it sadly retains to this day. Even the inverted and reversed pentagram, the upside down star they use everywhere with a goat face in it, on all these Emmys, Grammys, Super Bowl halftime shows, with Madonna, Beyonce, Lady Gaga, Katy Perry, and so many others on all these crazy rituals they do. If you haven't seen that, put in there satanic rituals, Madonna, Beyonce, Lady Gaga, Katy Perry, and you'll see even that celebration in Switzerland with the grand opening of the tunnel, with the demons dropping through the sky, and the flat car trains with all these people with skin-tight clothing where they looked naked and they were having orgies on these railroad cars that rolled across presidents and leaders from all over the world and news people, journalists, and everybody was astonished. You see where it came from here? There's certain people on our planet that are worshiping the fallen angels. So it seems. Even the inverted or reversed pentagram, seen by Western society as embodying ultimate evil. So all these symbols, even the archway of Baal they were putting in London and New York City, and later on through UNESCO, I found out they were putting 1,000 of these all over the world, was embodying ultimate evil, stems exclusively from this strange association between Azazel, the fallen angel, and the scapegoat ritual by the Jews. And the Jews are taking over the world. I should say not all Jews, but the Zionist, Kabbalistic Jews who control the secret societies. They have this very strange religion, worshiping fallen angels. Since Victorian times, this abhorrent symbol has been seen as a sign of the goat, of which witches, that's what it says here, witches, the two upright points signifying the animal's horns, attacking the heavens, an empty and meaningless legend that has no basis in ancient religious law, either Jewish or Christian. So it has everything to do with material of the Kabbalah, witchcraft, Satanism, secret societies. How so simple a design can have come to be so reviled by so many people is a mystery in itself. So this author is trying to discredit any concept of the devil. But he seems to be saying all this other stuff is real, fallen angels, mating with human women, apparently bringing on God's wrath, causing the great flood, which isn't. Yet knowledge that this association between the devil and the goat stems back to the punishment administered to Azazel makes the inverted pentagram one of the only symbols actually to preserve the memory of the fall of the Watchers. So there you have it. All these rituals they're doing, these beings they're honoring, are these fallen angels or fallen beings who apparently mated with humans and created some other kind of hybrid being named Nephilim. And the beings that did that were the Elohim, called Watchers, who were also called fallen angels. So what's going on today? Who's behind the scenes trying to bring us this new age and new world order? So that's my 2 hours for this video. And that's part 1, so that's to be continued. Thank you for watching my videos. Rick Miracle reporting. If you'd like to donate some money so I can further the cause and publish a book, or maybe go out there and organize a lecture or something, the donate link is in the comment section. And leave comments, because I am putting together a book. Got a lot of it compiled, and I've been republishing some videos, trying to gather some more intelligent information from some of you who know a lot. I can't know everything. When you send me stuff, I look it up, and then when I get done with that book, I'll try to have a similar type of book published, number 2, and maybe one number 3. I could make a book of all the comments I've been publishing in the press releases on Yahoo News from Reuters or Associated Press and many others that I've been making comments and collecting those comments for 10 years. Some amazing stuff people say. Even comments I was collecting for years 2008, 9, and 10, 11 from the Jerusalem Post, their #1 newspaper, the English edition. And the things that those Jewish people were saying, some of them so nasty and about Jesus, I can't repeat it. So maybe I'll make some books on all this material. Again, Rick Miracle reporting. Studying these books and making videos so that you can see what I've been learning.